Right, let's get straight to the point. I have spent the better part of 5 years trying to find the perfect mobile router. I am someone that genuinely loves mobile routers. I actually prefer them to desktop and standard broadband routers that you find in your home or office environment. I find them very convenient, and because I'm always on the go, it can be very beneficial to me. But I think it would be fair to say that trying to find the perfect mobile router has been a rough road. I don't ask for much. I just like my coffee to be black, I like my toast to be buttered, and I like my mobile router to be as following. It's got to be a 5G SIM, it's got to be Wi-Fi 6, it's got to be managed, it's got to be completely managed security, WPA3 full control. I want failover. I want a battery when I'm on the go. I want it to be low power consumption. I want physical LAN ports there. I want to be able to connect USBs. I want to have my storage. I want to be able to use public Wi-Fi. I want to use SIM card Wi-Fi. I want to use repeating Wi-Fi. I want a decent GUI. I want 2.5G. I want file services. I want tethering. I want a mobile router that has everything. And you know what? I found one. I actually found a mobile router that gives me all of that and more. It can't possibly be true that this does all of that. What could possibly be the downside? What could be the problem? How much? That is right. Today we're going to talk about this. This is the GL.iNet Puli AX, a router that I've been talking about in the background of this channel and in the comments of my other videos for the better part of 8 months. I heard about this device almost a year ago, and I was waiting for them to release it. I was like, it's being delayed. What is wrong? Is it just vaporware? But it's not. This is arguably and potentially the most capable and powerful mobile router in the world. And I say mobile, by the way, because this straddles both lanes. This device, I would argue, serves as a phenomenal in-house home or business router while simultaneously being the perfect mobile router as well. But we'll get on to what it does and what it doesn't later on in the video, because right now, when it comes to getting a mobile router, I think a lot of users that are looking at 5G SIMs, looking at mobile data plans, whether it's 30 days or 12-month contracts, the versatility of mobile broadband, and of course the increased performance available to a lot of regions as we get more 4 and indeed 5G coverage globally, means that those of you moving into a new home or office that need temporary internet, or at least internet that you can move around with you, whether you are static or going down the road or to another country, is beneficial. Now, this device with its insane £500 price tag comes off the back of several other mobile router devices from the brand. Now, one that we talked about on the channel around about a year ago was this. This was the Beryl, solid name, and I loved this device. It was a Wi-Fi 6 desktop router. It didn't have a SIM card on there. It had a low USB power on there. It had a VPN supported server and client add-on internally, where you could use different OpenVPN, WireGuard OpenVPN and other services internally. Even had a physical button to enable that VPN when you need it. But during my review of this device, and again, hopefully that's either on screen or linked in the description, I highlighted as much as I liked it, I didn't like the fact it didn't have a SIM slot, so I could only use public Wi-Fi and use a VPN or repeater services internally to guard myself. Or it didn't have the fact that it didn't have USB powered battery inside, which meant I was still reliant on using USB power from a client device or an outlet. Now this takes all of those criticisms and dials everything up to 11. Straight away, we can see from the design of it, they've gone for quite a businessy type feel there for the whole thing. Indeed, the top there, we can find out more information. And again, there should be some shots on screen, and later on we'll be going through the software. But straight away, when we go to the antenna, these middle two antennae here are Wi-Fi 6 internal. Now, this is an AX3000 rated device. That means it can support up to a shared bandwidth of 3,000 megabytes per second wirelessly. We'll get onto the rest later on. That means on there you've got your 2.4 and your 5 gigahertz networks there, frequencies I should say, which is around 600 megabits per second and 2,400 megabits per second. But again, that's shared across different devices, and we'll go through the number of devices and more in the software. Now, the other 4 antennae are for your actual cellular coverage, whether it's you're going to go for 5G in your region, and these are 5G NR, or when you're moving between 4G, 3G, and some of those H areas when you're really getting out of bounds there. Now, with the device and its wireless connectivity, you've also got on the rear physical network connections there, a 1 gigabit and a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet connection there. Now, annoyingly, the 2.5 one is the WAN/LAN. Now, don't get me wrong, it still means you can use it for a standard wireless connection, a wired connection rather than your WAN going into it for the 2.5G. So you can still introduce that into an existing 2.5G network if you've already got a switch over here that you want to connect to more devices. Yet, it's a shame there isn't more connections there. But once you really break it down onto what this is capable of, whether it is utilizing a USB phone connected tether or using one of the 2 SIM card slots inside, or you're going to be using repeater services for public Wi-Fi or existing network connections around you, the potential for the connectivity between client devices and this is absolutely huge. Now, when we look at the side connection, bring that down there, we're able to make out on the inside there, if I remove that label, several different connections and ports down the side of the device. Not only have we got the 2 micro SIM card slots inside there, which again you can populate with completely different SIM cards and either utilize them as 2 separate networks, or utilizing failover allow you, when you're and use the auto negotiation internally, to mean that when you go to different regions, if you do happen to have 2 SIM cards inside this, maybe the one with your mobile and a separate one for the local connection, it actually allows you to connect to the stronger connection of the 2, as well as having failover as well between them. That failover, by the way, spreads across the whole device. You could have this connected to your standard broadband internet going into your home or office, and you could have it connected via a USB tethered connected phone, and you could have the device connected to 1 or 2 separate SIM connected networks there. You could even repeat an existing one, and the system will fail over between the lot, which means you will not be without internet unless one of your 4 to 5 separate internet inputs are lost, which for a business user can be paramount. Talking of things that are paramount to business users, what about when the old electricity goes off? You may have heard me touch on and keep referring to this as a mobile router. It arrives with an external PSU, and that external PSU, you pop it inside into the plug point. As you can see, the light is coming on there, and it takes around about a minute and a half to boot up this device when it's in operation. Now, if you are someone in an office environment, this in an office environment, it's going to be great. You power it into the wall, you get all your work done. Now, what if you live somewhere with the the power connections are a little bit flaky there? What if during the day-to-day operations of your office, you have a power cut? Well, that's not going to be a problem, because this has got a fairly substantial internal battery in excess of 6,000 milliamp. That battery inside there will keep this going for an exceptionally long time. Obviously, that's going to be based on the utility and how much you're using on it, but that's still having an internal battery there, which is absolutely huge, even compared to modern mobile phones. So whether it is that you want to utilize the device in a static environment and want to make sure that you've got the equivalent of a UPS to make sure your internet connection doesn't go down in the event of a power cut, or you want to have it mounted and then when you're on the go, take it with you, that is an option. And indeed, talking about on the go, the system also arrives with the ability to attach it to the wall with this plate. You've got an adhesive panel, slap that on the wall, and then you attach this plate onto it. And then as and when you need to, you can go ahead and have it on the wall mounted when you're getting your work done at home or your office or whatever. And then when you're ready to go on the go, slot it from the wall panel. It attaches immediately. So again, it's those little quality of life things about this that I really, really like. Talking of quality of life, when we go back to those ports there on the rear, you can see a cheeky little USB port there. Also, if we go onto that internal panel once again, you can see a cheeky little SD card slot. This system arrives with 8 gig of internal storage on an eMMC storage area that can be used in conjunction with the general services, logs, reports, and even an app center, thanks to OpenWRT's add-ons with the software. But on top of that, you can attach a USB storage device or an SD card up to 1 terabyte. That data on there, you can create shared folders just like you would on a NAS. You can take advantage of Samba or WebDAV to allow local network connectivity, Samba SMB, or use WebDAV for remote access storage on this router across all of those myriad of different network connections locally or remotely. There is details on their official pages about during peak temperature periods, the system will automatically stop charging or utilizing the battery for that reason during that heavy temperature. There, again, that is a setting you can enable or disable there. I will say, because of that battery inside, if I had to start with the negatives on this, one of the things I'd start with is the weight. This thing weighs about 750 grams, so again, 3/4 of a kilo. It is not a light router. I'm waving it around. It's not tremendously heavy, but let's face it, as a mobile router, this thing's big. This is not going to fit in your laptop bag or your pocket. This is a router for those on the go who are going to be driving to conferences, traveling on systems where they have got a decent amount of space around them. This is not a small router for a single individual on the go. Heading directly into the software, I'm unfortunately going to ape a lot of the things I said about the Beryl device that I mentioned in a previous video. I still love this software. I think it toes a very fine line between keeping things user-friendly but also giving you a huge amount of control. I've dealt with a lot of SIM routers, and this still has one of the most comprehensive back-end control panels and system admin controls I've ever seen. As you can see right now, we've already got one device tethered. We've got a mobile phone tethered to this device. We've also got a SIM card already installed. We could go ahead and repeat, and we could use those WAN/LAN if we chose to, and again you can configure those anytime via the control panel into what you want them to be. The same goes if you want to use the repeater as well, if you want to add this to an existing network and ape off of that one. So failover wise, you're absolutely inundated. Right now I'm using a couple of disposable SIMs, so don't worry too much about my IP on screen. Alongside the configuration of control of 5G and 4G SIM cards and tethered connections that I've already talked about there, at the top you can take a look at the connected LAN and WAN clients as well. So as you can see, I've got several devices currently connected to this router, and not only can we control or block those and even manage their speed, by the way, but on top of that, if we wish, we can go ahead and find out more information about previously connected devices if we choose to, block them or modify those, removing clients long term. Again, lovely and user-friendly there. Going into the Wi-Fi settings, again, as you'd expect, the usual controls for passwords. You've also got the guest Wi-Fi connections as well, and modifying those existing connections, really straightforward. You can change the security level pretty extensively, as well as, if you choose to, change some of those Wi-Fi modes, making sure you're using your bandwidth and radio frequencies as efficiently as possible. You can also find out more historical information about connections because this system has storage internally. A lot of these analytical reports are being generated live in the back end, which is pretty darn good. Also on top of that, you can find out, again, any messages that come through into individual SIM cards. If you've got individual towers within your region that you're connecting to, you can actually fix some of these if you choose to. Also, as mentioned, the failover options there are pretty darn good. We looked at it in the previous Beryl device there, but again, you can choose the priority of certain things if you wish. If you are utilizing the repeater on a third-party internet connection, even if it's a public one, as a real last resort, you can integrate that if you choose to, as well as load balancing there if you wish to integrate multiple connections into single kind of AB connections there very easily. Now with connected clients we've already gone through, and again that goes down to all the individual devices that you can indeed label and kind of sit within little profile groups. VPN controls, there's something we've talked about on this device and its predecessor, the ability to integrate third-party VPNs with your own existing logins for those very easily. A lot of them have their creation screens built in as well. It's very straightforward, and you can add pretty much the default ones there. You can create individual ones. You can go ahead and create brand new ones that utilize existing profiles that you download and then upload to the configuration of your VPN immediately onto this router. There's also the option to add applications. There's a plugin center there, which is pretty darn extensive. Some of these are already pre-installed, things like Tailscale integration. So if you've already got a Tailscale network of portable VPN devices, bung them in. Same with Zero Tier, same with AdGuard devices. It's all built in there, along with the Overwatch of something like Good Cloud. But the plugin selection there is going to be internet dependent. And right now, as you can see, the number of apps and services that are on there are pretty darn big. So again, the amount of storage space you have and what you can integrate, there's a lot of pages there to play with and a lot you can integrate. But again, remember, a lot of these are going to be third party. Now, stepping away from the tethering there, what if you integrate a storage drive, like a USB drive there? Well, if you go into the network storage settings there, as you can see, I've connected an external 1TB SSD drive here, and straight away, you can go ahead if you wish and enable remote access to this device, either remotely over the internet via WebDAV or using something straightforward like SMBs, creating shared folders if you choose to, directly onto that drive. It is recommended, of course, if you would rather utilize something a little bit more breadcrumb and file folder for your mobile setup there, you are going to need to use the mobile application there. And the mobile app you can download directly from here with the 3D barcode, and that allows you to access the external drive and manage a lot of those file folders very easily, as well as setting up which users can access it, all very straightforwardly from that user interface. It's by no means a network attached storage device, but the idea of attaching any old USB drive and turning it into a Samba drive, a remote WebDAV, or simple DLNA is going to be appealing to those that want to be able to do this as easy as possible. Now, network management, again, firewall controls, creating multiple individual wide area networks, local area networks, it's all controllable very, very straightforwardly. And of course, you can set the router up to either live behind another router, be a remote access point, an extender of an existing one, or even multiple of these using those failovers there. IPv6 support, MAC address filtering, the whole works are in this, and even network acceleration, but that will affect some of your hardware resources there. Talking of hardware resources, let's talk a little bit about the system hardware. System hardware there, you can take a little look at CPU integration, memory utilization, battery use, LED controls there, all of this from this simple user-friendly interface. I can't stress enough how much I've always enjoyed this GUI, and with regular updates, indeed when I started this video, as you can see there, down here, 25 minutes since the update, I've actually been recording with this router for the better part of a month and a half, and there's been several updates in that time. Indeed, one this morning. The point I'm making here is this is a very easy to control router, something that is actually surprisingly hard to do. And if you do want to use command line, you can still go ahead and do that for the more tech experienced. Ultimately, even though this is a mobile router, and I know it is vastly expensive, when it comes to the software level, you do have a lot of control, and I think this does balance between the more technically knowledgeable and the more newbie focused on network controls very, very well. Next up, we're going to do some very brief speed tests here. Now, keep in mind, of course, the 5G coverage, or indeed 4G SIM coverage, wherever you are in the world, is going to make all of the difference. I'm based in Worthing here on the coast of England, and as you can see, I'm doing a quick test. As you can see, 5G is readily available. I've already got an O2 SIM inside this router, and before we go any further, I should highlight right now, just to give you a basis of comparison, I'm connecting to a QNAP router here that is based on a standard mains internet line here, not the SIM card, just to give you an idea. Obviously, this is going to be a great deal faster. As you can see, this isn't some high dense internet connection here, but still, nonetheless, we are still getting 180 megabits per second. That's a wired internet connection there. That's not a huge surprise there, with an upload there that's getting close to 100 megabit there. I'm just going to cut it out there, and then what I'm going to do down here on the bottom of the screen, you can see the QNAP router, and we're going to switch over to the SIM router here, which can let it go for the connection. As it goes for its connection, as you can see the left hand side, it's logged us back into the user interface. There's our router. As you can see, there's our Wi-Fi connection that we're connected to. We're on that O2 SIM right there, and if we go for the wide connection as there, you can see the name of the router, and on the bottom right of the screen, you're able to see there the router that we're connected to. Also on top of this, I should highlight that again, we're going to do a Google test here, but we'll run a fast test as well afterwards. We'll just run that there in the background. So straight away, we're already getting, close to and in or around 50 megabits per second. Again, of course, that pales in comparison to the wired connection that I just showed you. But for a SIM card connection, that's not so shabby. But look at that upload speed. 75 megabits per second is phenomenal. When I was looking at upload speeds, what I was looking at more and more was looking at average upload speed, which is really hard to find on 5G connections. Some places in the world can go up to 120 megabits per second upload speed. I was getting 71, which on a SIM connection is astounding. Now, part of that is the bonding of those two connections I've got there. I've got a tethered connection in conjunction with that O2 connection there. And that has certainly added something, thanks to load balancing, on those two connections. But nevertheless, that is still a great performance number. And again, just make sure we know it's not a fluke. We'll go for internet connection speed there. And now we're going for a fast speed test here at megabits per second. We're still seeing it in that 50 megabits per second. And we break down into 5G coverage. We look at O2 there. That's pretty reasonable. Most of the O2 ones there at 70 to 80 cap, going up to 301 megabits per second. Again, download not upload. Still very good numbers, I would say. Overall, again, a speed test on this is going to be very variable based on where you are in the world and your SIM and cell phone provider of choice. Nevertheless, this is definitely a lovely little router in terms of performance numbers to make your way over to a SIM internet connection. But just keep in mind that the router is a small part of the battle, and the internet service provider in terms of cellular connection is where the real battle is going to be. I've said it at the beginning and I will say it again. I have never in 5 years of constant, I would say almost monthly searching of a perfect SIM router have I found a single device that includes all of the features this does. We are of course talking about the products with an frankly incredible price tag, when the majority of SIM routers start at around 50 quid and end at about 300 quid. This is more than double the maximum price of any router I've talked about here on the channel, I believe. But at the same time, you are paying for that incredible feature set. You are paying for a device that has got between 4 and 6 different ways to input the internet directly into this during operation. You have a router that has power protection when it loses mains power. It is a portable router that is just as capable as most desktop routers in the market. You have an enormous amount of wireless coverage. You have 2.5 gigabit Ethernet alongside the 1 GB on multiple LAN Ethernet connections there on the rear. I just wish there was more of them. You have a router here that has USB support, SD card support, and internal storage that can be used for the system services and applications and add-ons, as well as adding storage to be accessed locally on the network over SMB and remote access as well. We are talking about a device with the ability to immediately one-click set up with the likes of OpenVPN and WireGuard to have nice encrypted transmission, as well as adding the likes of Tailscale and more all onto it. Very, and I've even gotten to zero tier. The system itself is the best example of a mobile router that can combat and compete with desktop routers out there. But do know you are doing it with that hefty price tag on your shoulder. And of course, a mobile router that's got a decent amount of heft to it. We're going to be doing more on this route because I've waited long enough to get this in the studio. I don't think I'm going to make one video on this. I'm going to deep dive this just a little bit more. So let me know what you want to see. We will be looking into power consumption more. One of the issues with power consumption, of course, is whether it is that you're rating this against the internal battery or mains power, it's going to differ. So do let me know what you want to see in those future videos on this device. But if you want to learn more, there should be a written review very soon on the Puli AX down below, linked over on NASCompares. And of course, links where you can get hold of this. And if you're going to go to those websites, I've linked to the description to Amazon, GBNHs or whatever. If you're going to go to those sites anyway, and this video has helped you, why not use those links anyway? It really helps us out in what we do. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.